Hey, y'all. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Saturdays Rewritten here on YouTube or your favorite podcast listening platform. Today, we're going to get into the college football playoff. There's already been some changes happening to this current format, and we've got further changes coming in 2026 as well. We'll get into it. And then we're also going to do a deep dive into the Oregon Ducks out on the West Coast, as well as the Alabama Crimson Tide by popular demand, given that I'm here in the state of Alabama. Before we dive in, though, if you would do me the favor of going down and liking this video and subscribing to my channel here on YouTube, that'll help me with the YouTube algorithm and to grow the channel. And then, of course, if you're listening on podcast, if you would do me a favor and leave me a 5-star review, that'll help my podcast grow as well, and it'll just help me with the download side of things. So, without further ado, let's get into this episode. So yes, the college football playoff is once again about to change. Yeah, we just got over this new 12-team format. Now we're going to see a change into this 12-team format, and then next year we're probably going to see the college football playoff expand even further to either 14 or 16 teams. According to reports, it's more likely that it's going to be 16 teams. Just what? For 10 years, we had 4 teams from 2014 to 2023, and then it has now exploded into what it is today. It's crazy how fast this thing has grown, how quick it's expanded. And I mean, can you blame college football world? It's like a free ATM, except with the college football logo on the side of it. It's just going to print money. People are going to tune in and watch, and then you're going to get these big brands from the Big Ten, the SEC, to do battle together. That'll boost the ratings. You know, they're obviously trending to a curated product similar to that of the NFL. That's seems to be their goal to me, at least from the outside looking in. So what are actually these changes that we're talking about here? Well, in this year's current iteration, last year, the college football playoff, the basic gist of it was that you had the 4 conference champions get the first round buys. So, for example, you had Oregon win the Big Ten. They go into the first round bye as the number 1 seed. Then you had Boise State get a first round bye. You had Arizona State get a first round bye. And then you had Georgia collect a first round bye after their win of the SEC championship. And the whole reason that they've gone about this change is they saw conversations were being had of, man, does it even benefit Oregon to win the Big Ten championship and then go in and get the number 1 overall seed? To me, it didn't. That the fact that we're even asking that question before the college football playoff started, you know something's wrong with your postseason. Even Lane Kiffin came out and said, you know, Ole Miss, before they blew it to Florida at the Swamp, Lane Kiffin was saying, does it even help us to go to Atlanta and play in the SEC championship game? If you're having coaches and people around the country asking that question, changes have to be made, and that's why they went out and made this change. We are now going to have straight seeding in this coming college football playoff. So essentially, if we kind of look at how last year turned out, so how it would have looked would have been 12-seeded Clemson would have gone at Notre Dame. 11th-seeded Arizona State would have gone at 6th-seeded Ohio State. 10th-seeded SMU at 7th-seeded Tennessee, and then the 9th-seeded Boise State Broncos at the 8th-seeded Indiana Hoosiers. Now, this decision was made because obviously the SEC and the Big Ten were looking around and going, wait a minute, Oregon just got hosed. Why do they have to play a tougher path to the college football championship after having a perfect 13-0 season? How is this a thing? So now they've gone straight seeding, which is going to obviously have numerous factors contributing to this seeding. And obviously strength of schedule is going to be a big time indicator as well. Because at the end of the day, the SEC and the Big Ten are sick and tired of having their 9-3 teams being compared to teams from weaker conferences at even if the weaker conference team has maybe a 10-2 record or even 11-1, frankly, they're probably looking around and going, do you know how hard it is for us to go through this gauntlet of a schedule? And here you are, comparing our team to this team over here who didn't have to play a single Power Four team or anything like that. Are we really having this discussion? And ultimately, it's kind of their fault because they had to go up and blow up what was college football. Pac-12 is now dead, and they had to go in and add all these big brands. Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC, and then you have the Pac-12 teams, a lot of them joining the Big Ten. So ultimately, it's their fault. They're the ones who made the mess, but they're right. They're right. The SEC and the Big Ten are a class of their own. They went out and formed these major mega conferences, and now they have a really rough schedule because every week they're playing a top tier team for the most part. Now, there's still, of course, teams that, I don't look at a Northwestern or a Purdue, for example, and think, oh man, that's a brutal game right there. But you get the gist. Is a lot of depth in both of these conferences going forward. So the strength of schedule is going to be considered big time when it comes to making these decisions on the straight seating. So as much as I hate the direction that the college football playoff is headed, and I'm not a fan of expansion, I do like the decision of the straight seating to where we're not going to have what happened to Oregon last year. We're not going to see Boise State, even though they had a great year. Ashton Genty was a lot of fun to watch. They had an easier path, and they get rewarded and get a first round bye. Doesn't make sense to me. So I understand why they did it. Going forward, here's how things are going to look in 2026, according to reports. So here are some recent articles that have come out, and Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports has kind of given us a snapshot of what 2026 and beyond is going to be looking like. The SEC and the Big Ten have come in and said, since we are the head honchos now, since we run this thing, here's how it's going to go down. Here's the only way we agree to something like this. And here's kind of the format we'd be looking at. So 4 teams for the SEC, 4 teams from the Big Ten, 2 teams from the ACC, 2 teams from the Big 12, and then you're going to get 1 from the Group of 5 or the G6, whatever it's called these days, and then you're going to get 3 at-large bids. Which, let's be real, that could very well be all Big Ten or SEC teams. That's just the new landscape, folks. They hold all the cards, and the future of the tournament is in their hands. So, quote, according to most who have viewed the memorandum of understanding from last spring, the SEC and the Big Ten hold sole discretion on the future of the college football playoff format starting in 2026. The beginning of the college football playoff's new 6-year television agreement with ESPN that runs through the 2031 playoff. The agreement grants the league's decision-making powers over the format, but directs them to have meaningful consultation and collect, quote, input from the other conferences before making their decision. Yeah, I wonder what that input is. Hey, can we please have 2 bids? Yeah, that's the direction we're headed. And also, this is currently happening too, and we're probably going to see this be rolled out here in the next couple of months. The Big Ten and the SEC officials have been in deep discussion on remaking conference championship weekend to include play-in games for at least their last 2 automatic qualifying spots in a 4-4-2-2-1 format, as well as a shift in college football playoff start to Army-Navy weekend. This again, according to Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports. So what I could see that turning into is now the conference championship. On the one hand, I don't like the idea of the automatic qualifier, but on the other hand, if we are headed to this 16-team format where I understand the automatic qualifier side of things, and here's why. I think, like I mentioned, last year's college football playoff setup to where people are talking about, wait a minute, is this kind of a punishment if we go to our conference championship? Does it even help us win the conference championship? I think that is a big time negative. So this is why the automatic qualifier could help things. What they could do potentially is set up to where the regular season is king. You have to the conference championship race is bigger than ever. In order for the Big Ten and the SEC especially, you have to secure one of these four spots. That is the big thing. So what I could see them doing is turning the conference championship game, into a almost a play-in in of itself. Or a similar setup could be you have the conference championship game, and then you have two play-in games for the last two spots. You could have the third ranked team in the SEC versus the sixth ranked team in the SEC, and then also the fourth ranked team of the SEC taking on the fifth ranked team for the SEC. Same for the Big Ten. And then you could have two games that are play-in games. Imagine the intensity for those games. They're literally playing for their playoff lives. And then those are the two spots right there. Could have that in place of the conference championship, to where the conference championship game is now replaced with those two, and the first two teams are just automatically ushered in to receive those first two seats in the conference championship setup. Does that make any sense? The fact that we are 13 minutes into this recording and explaining what's going on come college football playoff time just shows how crazy the 16 team setup is going to be. I mean, it used to be with the BCS. Hey, these are the first two teams right here. Let's have them play for the national championship. Done. It's over. Obviously, you had that one-off scenario with Texas behind me, where you had that three-team tie in the Big 12. A lot of debate came up as a result. Probably one of the reasons the BCS went out the door, and here we are with the playoff system. So that's the direction it's headed, ladies and gentlemen. Expansion is coming just like that. We've already got a change this year. Everything this year will remain the same, other than the straight seeding format is going to be the difference. By the way, I just hope that I wish that there were no, a part of me wishes there were no buys ultimately. I understand for the first four, maybe they get a buy. I get it. I understand that. But I do hope that the first round of the playoffs is still on an on-campus setting. That was really cool. So let's keep that going forward. Now, let's go to our deep dive segment. Today, we have got the Oregon Ducks and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Let's go ahead and kick things off with Oregon heading out to the West Coast out of the Big Ten. Still weird for me to say Oregon is in the Big Ten, but this is the day and age that we're in, ladies and gentlemen. So Oregon last year obviously had a pretty solid debut into their new conference, as they went a perfect 12-0 in the regular season. They ran the gauntlet early on in the season, though. It was looking a little bit shaky. They struggled against the Idaho Vandals right out of the gate, and then they almost lost to Boise State at home. Credit to Boise State. They're a solid team, obviously, a college football playoff caliber team. And with Ashton Jeanty running all over the Ducks, that was a close game. Oregon almost lost that one, but they ended up using that as a rallying cry, and they just smoked the rest of their competition. They did have some close ones, like at Wisconsin was a close one, but they found a way to win, even in the ugly games. So fast forward to the Big Ten championship game, they took on Penn State, and they won. They beat Penn State, I think it was 45-38. But ultimately, Oregon did have it seemingly a 14-point cushion for a lot of that game, and Penn State was always trying to claw their way back in, and Oregon hung on and got the number one overall seed and a first-round bye in the college football playoff. But again, what was their reward for having the perfect season, going 13-0 and being the best ranked team in the country? Well, they got to play Ohio State, who was on a revenge tour and a villain arc, you could say, after they lost to Oregon in the regular season and then got beat by their arch rival again, the Michigan Wolverines, at home in a really ugly game. Ohio State, they went full beast mode. So, what did Oregon get for their perfect season? Going perfect 13-0, beating Ohio State at home, beating Michigan on the road, beating a tough Illinois Fighting Illini team at home 38-9. What did they get for that perfect season? They got to play the Ohio State Buckeyes, who were on their villain arc after losing to Oregon in the regular season and then losing to Michigan at home. That just triggered something for the Ohio State Buckeyes. But you know how Dan Lanning is. He says, hey, we'll play them anytime, anywhere. So how did that game go? Yeah, that did not pan out very well for the Ducks there. They just came out and laid an egg. There's no other way to put it. And Dan Lanning said as much in the post game press conference where he said, we just did not come out and play our best. And to be clear, he gave credit to Ohio State. A lot of people came out and attacked him because somebody edited a clip to where he didn't, mention any credit to Ohio State, and he just put all the blame on, well, Oregon, we didn't come out and play our best football. People immediately pounced on him. No, he gave credit to Ohio State. He took it on the chin. The Ducks took it on the chin, and that was the end of their season. Brutal, brutal stuff. I had Oregon going to the college football playoff championship in my bracket, but it just was not meant to be. And, I thought it would at least be a close game, but Ohio State, they came out and laid the wood to them. So let's shift gears to now this season. And I mean, Oregon has lost a lot of talent. There's no way to sugarcoat this, folks. They lost Dylan Gabriel, the Heisman Trophy finalist and the quarterback who led Oregon on this miraculous, perfect 13-0 start. He's gone. You lose Jordan James, the starting running back and the leading rusher of the team. You lose Tez Johnson, the wide receiving room's leading receiver in yards and touchdowns. You lose Jordan Birch, defensive end, strong defensive end with significant loss on the defensive line. You lose Derek Harmon, the starting defensive tackle. All of these guys are off to the NFL, by the way. Ultimately, they lost their top quarterback, their top running back, their 4 best wide receivers, and 4 starting offensive linemen. That's what Oregon lost on the offensive side of things. On top of this, Oregon also had a lot of transfers out. They had 20 transfers leave this offseason. Oregon is ranked 109th nationally in regards to returning talent, returning production. The Big Ten average is 56% returning production. Oregon is at only 41%. They lost a lot of production from last year's team. All that to say. So, Garrison, are you saying that Oregon is in for a rough season this coming year? I mean, how are they going to rebuild from losing all that talent, losing that elite NFL talent? Oregon reloaded. They're probably going to be fine. So they brought in the second best ranked recruiting class. They brought in the 4th best ranked transfer portal class. And on top of this, in my opinion, their schedule looks pretty easy. They dodge Ohio State and they dodge Michigan. They don't have Illinois on their schedule. They don't have a Nebraska on their schedule. They do have a couple of tough ones. They do have at Penn State, but with the caveat that big noon kickoff has ruined things for the teams in the Big Ten, for teams on any team that plays on Fox. It's ruined because now it's not going to be a night game at Penn State. And there is something different about playing a night game in a whiteout setting in Happy Valley. That is just unbeatable sort of setup right there. But big noon kickoff had to ruin it. So here we are. At least the Ducks don't. It'll still be a tough game, but Oregon doesn't have to play Penn State at night. So there's that. They do have to go at Iowa. That's always a tough place to play. And then they do have to go at Washington. Everybody else is home. USC, maybe they could be tricky. Wisconsin can be tough at times, but I don't really know where they're going as a program. They seem very up and down. Luke Fickell. I keep waiting for more of an explosion from Wisconsin, but they just seem stuck in mediocrity, frankly. The Ducks will be relying on the new starting quarterback in Dante Moore. Now, for those of you who don't know of or don't remember Dante Moore first started his career at UCLA, and he was recruited there by Chip Kelly. He was also considering Oregon. They were kind of the 2 schools that he was looking at. Ultimately, UCLA won out, and he got to play right away as a freshman. He didn't start that year as the quarterback, but he was thrown into the mix about halfway through the season, and he put up some decent yards. He did also have some big time breakout games where I think he almost put up 300 against San Diego State, 3 touchdowns. It was a great game, but he also showed weaknesses in that, his youth, his inexperience. He had some growing pains as well. So he gets thrown in halfway through the season, and we see flashes. We see flashes of what he could be, and he had some great games as well. But we also saw that he did have inexperience. He made decisions that were just not what you need out of a starting quarterback. He had some growing pains, let's just say. So fast forward to the end of that year, he transfers, goes to Oregon, to where he basically sat behind Dylan Gabriel all season last year. Talk about a solid player to learn from. And he got the chance to be in Dan Lanning's system, be around the coaching staff, be around the school, get comfortable. And now he is getting ready to take the reins this year coming into 2025. So there's the whispers around campus is that Dante Moore could be a Heisman contender, and he's already in the standings when it comes to the Heisman odds. He's obviously going to be behind the likes of Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier of LSU, and Cade Klubnik of Clemson. He's obviously going to be behind those guys. He's also in the mix with Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State, wide receiver. It's not certainly he's not high up on the list, but the fact that he's already getting looks as a Heisman contender, there's whispers about him being good on campus and also across the country. So excited to see what he turns out to be this year. But they also brought in a lot of talent to surround him and help make this campaign a little bit more easy on his end. So I mentioned how they lost 4 offensive linemen from last year's team. They went out and got some guys, especially a couple that come to mind. Isaiah World, offensive tackle from Nevada, a senior. The World name is kind of synonymous. He's 6'8". The guy is massive, and he has some good game tape on him as well. Then you've got on the interior offensive line, you got Emmanuel Pregnan. He's one of the best ranked interior offensive linemen in the portal, and he's likely going to start at left guard. You got Mekhi Hughes, one of the top running backs in the portal. He's expected to help replace Jordan James. You got Malik Benson at wide receiver from Florida State. He's going to help fill in that talented wide receiving room. So ultimately, Oregon went out and got some guys. Okay. Oregon also, they just got a great coach in Dan Lanning and a great culture. And ultimately, I think they're going to dominate in the trenches like they usually do. So the last 2 years, Oregon has been a Joe Moore Award finalist on the offensive line. In 2023, they were a finalist, and then in 2024, they were a semifinalist. So they know how to dominate the trenches on the offensive line. That is going to help in pass protection for Dante Moore, and that is going to help in the run game, which also takes pressure off of Moore as a quarterback. If you're able to have a balanced attack, just opens things up a lot more for the rest of the team. And then on the defensive side of things, actually, before we go to the defensive side of things, the run blocking. The Ducks' offensive line consistently paved the way in recent years for their strong rushing attack. They have a rushing success rate last year. They ranked second in the nation in rushing success rate. But the defensive line, they also dominate the trenches. Last year, they ranked 13th nationally in sacks. They recorded 40 sacks as a team. And in they ranked second in the Big Ten as well. And I expect a lot of that to continue as they're bringing back a lot of experience on the defensive line as well. Oregon, I think, is in for a big season. They brought in some big names into the secondary, some 5-star talent. They flipped a guy from Ohio State who's going to probably end up playing a lot of football this year. Oregon's loaded from sideline to sideline. And ultimately, I just really like Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning in his time at Oregon, he's 35-6 into the 2024 season. And ultimately, I just like Dan Lanning. The guy has a .854 win percentage in his time at Oregon, 35-6. They just show up and expect to win. They'll play anybody, anytime, anywhere. He has instilled that culture into Oregon, and a lot of Nick Saban's principles from his time at Alabama with Nick Saban as an assistant to where he is now at Oregon. And he has built that program up for success. So I really like the Ducks this year. Fully expect them to have a great season in the Big Ten and be right back in the college football playoff. Ducks will be fun to watch, just like their uniforms. And that brings us down south to the great state of Alabama, where I live, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, last year, Nick Saban obviously steps the first time without Nick Saban at the helm in since what, 2007? Totally different times in the state of Alabama. And they went out, though, and hired, in my opinion, one of the best guys they could have gotten, and that would be Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer has won everywhere he's gone. At Sayuk Falls, an NAIA school, he was 67-3 in his 4 years there. At Fresno State, he was 12-6, and then at Washington, he was 25-3, and got the Huskies to the college football championship. They lost a close, well, they beat Texas, but then they had lost a tough one to Michigan. Michigan just dominated the trenches that year, and it was a tough game for the Huskies. But Kalen DeBoer got him there. 67-3 at a school, 104-12 before taking over for Alabama. Kalen DeBoer knows how to build a winning program. He knows how to win. Now, obviously, he's a lot different than Nick Saban as far as his demeanor, as far as the way he coaches his players, the system he's going to implement. It's a different coach all around. He likes to sling the ball around a little bit more. I think Nick Saban was adapting in that way too, as we had numerous quarterbacks for Alabama kind of ascend into stars as opposed to early on in his career at Alabama, where it was just ground and pound and really tough defense. And then the quarterbacks were more of kind of a game manager type scenario. But now Alabama is kind of be heading towards the more the gunslinger look, more the run and shoot type of offense that he had at Washington, I think, when all is said and done, which he did it very well. So, Alabama fans, you should be excited. Overall, last year, Alabama finished 9-4, and ultimately, I think if I think there were unrealistic Alabama fans out there who, just expected the world. Ultimately, I think Alabama had lost a lot of talent. And in such a tumultuous time as this, where you got a brand new coach, a brand new system in this brand new world of college football where people are leaving on a dime and there's a lot of turnover, I think 9-4, obviously there were some games Alabama should not have lost there, and maybe we're having a different discussion. That Vanderbilt loss was bad, and that loss to Oklahoma was also bad. Tennessee game too. The offense just fell apart. I think Jalen Milroe is a solid quarterback, but in Kalen DeBoer's system, I don't know if he is the exact fit that you're looking for. You're looking for a gunslinger who's going to be a consistent passer, and I just don't think Jalen Milroe is that guy. He did great with his legs, but in any case, Alabama, when they beat Georgia, I thought, oh my gosh, we could be having this could be the best team in the country. that was kind of the instant reaction when that game happened. But then obviously the rest of the way, there was some bumps and bruises. There was a tough couple of weeks. They also almost lost to South Carolina at home. Could you imagine if DeBoer went 8-5 at Alabama? 9-4 is bad enough, especially ending the year with a rough loss to Michigan, a Michigan team who didn't even have an offense for that matter. Michigan hardly put the ball through the air. It was just straight run, and play defense. So obviously not the Alabama standard. I do think there are some realistic Alabama fans out there who are like, hey, we've had a great run with Nick Saban. A brand new coach and his brand new system have just been implemented. We won 9 games. That's not where we want to be, but give him a second. I think a lot of people were understanding on that end, despite a lot of the haters. What are things looking like for Alabama going into this season? Well, I think things are looking pretty good. So, according to ESPN's Bill Connolly, over returning production, Alabama has 63% returning production. Remember, compared to Oregon at 41%, they kept a lot of ballers on this team coming in this year. On top of this, they didn't lose a single scholarship player in the spring transfer portal. That in and of itself is a massive accomplishment and a testament to Kalen DeBoer and his coaching staff. I think Alabama could be in the makings for a pretty special season here. The 2025 recruiting class finished third nationally at Alabama and was headlined by a five-star quarterback in Keelan Russell and five-star cornerback Dijon Lee, as well as 7 players ranked in the top 100 nationally. So, solid recruiting class coming in, which we all knew Kalen DeBoer could recruit. And they also added several notable players through the transfer portal, including wide receiver Isaiah Horton from Miami, linebacker Nikai Hill-Green from Colorado. He's a veteran. He's going to play a role in this linebacking core, and an offensive lineman in Cam Dewberry from Texas A&M. Now, it's certainly not going to be easy for Alabama this year. According to ESPN's SP Plus rankings, Alabama's strength of schedule is 11th this year. They play in the SEC. They know this is part of being at Alabama. It's going to be tough. It is what it is. They're in the SEC. They know this. So, who are some of the guys to be looking out for this season for the Crimson Tide? I like the look of Ty Simpson at quarterback, redshirt junior and the most experienced quarterback. He's played 16 games. He's a former 5-star recruit and considered the front runner. And the offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb. By the way, Ryan Grubb finally coming back and joining Kalen DeBoer as his offensive coordinator. That's a big get for Alabama. We're going to see, I think that's going to help Kalen DeBoer continue to establish his new system here at Alabama. So that's a big get, can't be understated. So that's the quarterback situation. At wide receiver, the wide receiving core is seen as another strong point for the Crimson Tide. They're returning Ryan Williams, of course. He had a fantastic season last year. And then Gurmy Bernard will be joining. And then, of course, Isaiah Horton. I already mentioned him. The defensive line is an early candidate for the deepest and strongest position group on, and the emergence of James Smith is proving to be a strong core. They've got an excellent secondary, and the O-line obviously was not in exactly a strong point for the Crimson Tide last year. I think they gave up a lot of sacks, which is saying something when you have somebody as mobile as Jalen Milroe and you're still giving up a ton of sacks. Not a good look for the Crimson Tide. So I think they went out and addressed some problems on the offensive line. They have a deep secondary. They've got a deep defensive front. I think the linebacking core is going to be another strong suit as well for the Crimson Tide. And looking at this schedule here, obviously they got at Florida State to kick off the season. That'll be a good one on ABC. They've got Wisconsin at home. They have to go at Georgia. That's going to be a battle. That's going to be one of the biggest games of the season right there. Can't wait to see what happens between the hedges. They got Vanderbilt, a revenge game at home. That could be a fun one. You never know. I don't think Vanderbilt's going to be really anywhere as close to have as good of a season as they did last year, we'll just say. At Missouri could be tricky. At South Carolina is going to be tough. They got LSU coming home. And then Oklahoma, I think, is going to be improved. And then at Auburn. I think Auburn is a sleeper. Last year, Auburn was bad. We all know that. But this year, I think Auburn's a sleeper. They've had a top 15 recruiting class each of the last 4 seasons. We're going to start seeing returns on that investment. So keep an eye out for Auburn. I think we could be having a fun Iron Bowl this year. So keep an eye out on that. So all this to say, I think Alabama is set up to have potentially an excellent season. If their quarterback, Ty Simpson, who's the projected starter, it's still an open competition from what I'm hearing from Coach DeBoer and Coach Grubb. If they get the quarterback situation figured out and they're able to sling the ball from sideline to sideline, fitting more into what Kalen DeBoer's system was meant to be, then I think Alabama could very well be in the running for one of those top 2 spots in the SEC. Obviously, you've got Texas, you've got Georgia. I think Alabama could be in that mix, but it's a tough schedule. It's a brutal schedule. LSU, I've heard really great things about LSU too. LSU is going to be fighting for one of those top 2 spots. That's just how good the SEC is. Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, all of those guys are going to be fighting for those top 4 spots, or those top spots, in this coming college football playoff. So, and they've got to play Georgia and LSU. Oh, and Tennessee at home. Tennessee's not going to be as good as they were last year. I've got questions at quarterback. They lost a lot of talent on defense. They lost Dylan Sampson at running back. Tennessee we'll see. I think this is probably going to be a little bit more of a build for next year type year for them, but nonetheless. And then Auburn, we'll see what Auburn turns into. But Alabama's got a tough schedule, but I think they've got all the tools and a great coach in Kalen DeBoer for this to be a special season in Tuscaloosa. Time will tell. That's going to do it, folks. Thanks for tuning in this episode. We will see you next time on Saturdays Rewritten. Don't forget to like and subscribe.